Yo, what is going on, you guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we're going to be doing the Amazing Spider-Man series finale, the last part before Spider-Verse crossover, the Sinister 6. Now, this is the last part in the Andrew series, and it's finally coming to an end. If you have enjoyed this Andrew series, make sure to leave a like, comment down below what your favorite moments are from the series. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button to not miss any more content as soon as it goes up. And with that being said, let's get straight into the video. The Amazing Spider-Man, the Sinister 6. We start this movie with Norman Osborn in prison. He has just been sent to prison in the last movie after the death of Donald Mencken and being behind all of the Green Goblin attacks. Then he is approached by someone in prison. It's Herman Schultz. Herman seems pissed off at Norman, that he lied. Norman promised that Spider-Man would be out of the picture and Herman would be getting his big score. Norman says that if he's in, he has one more final plan to take him down. Norman mentions that they've been doing it wrong each time. Each time they have fought Spider-Man, his ability to adapt to a situation and overcome an opponent, combining both his sheer strength, agility and smarts, has put all of the villains he's gone up against at a disadvantage. But one thing he wouldn't be able to deal with, says Norman, is if they all went up against him at once. We then cut to Peter, who is happier than he was before. He feels like a massive weight has been lifted up off of his shoulders since the last movie, and now that he has been honest with MJ, that things will be better than before. He is with MJ and we have a moment where MJ questions why Peter never told her before, and he simply says that when he's Spider-Man, things get complicated. And since this is the last one in the series, we have a little moment where these two characters reflect on everything that has happened over the last couple of movies. Peter's arc, however, isn't over yet. In the last movie, he learned to be honest with the people around him, including MJ and Felicia. However, after the last movie, he started to lose concentration of what it really meant to be responsible as Spider-Man. Yes, the responsibility theme is going to be the final learning curve for Spider-Man in this series, and while that may seem like it's regressing the character, it's almost like a re-evaluation of responsibility. So much has happened over the last few years for this character, and due to other personal arcs and issues, Peter has grown too close to the ones he loves, like I mentioned in the last movie, to the point where protecting them is the only thing he cares about. At the end of the last movie, he saved MJ and then was honest with her. Peter may think that it's fine at the moment, but he really has to realize where he's going wrong. His need is different from his want. His need is that he has a responsibility to protect the city at large as Spider-Man, but his want right now is just to keep MJ safe because he's afraid of what happened to Gwen happening again, and that really being the overarching theme throughout the movies since TASM 3. The theme of not letting slip what once slipped through his fingers, the ones he loves. So that's why this scene is necessary to reflect and really make it apparent that this theme and arc for this movie is the last arc and the last final lesson for Peter Parker. Peter will have a scene with Aunt May where he tells her that he was honest with both Felicia and MJ, and Aunt May will be happy for him and she will tell him that he has done the right thing. Obviously, as we know, Aunt May did tell him to do that at the end of the last movie. There will be a subtle scene where there will be a small crime downtown, but it won't be too large, and Spider-Man won't show up on the scene, and Black Cat will end up taking it down instead. Then we will cut to Peter and MJ as he started to spend more time with her. He'll be swinging around the city with MJ on his back, emphasizing the fact that Peter is being Spider-Man for the ones he loves now, rather than the city and everyone at large. The everyman aspect starts to slip away from the character, which is one of the core ideologies of the character too. Peter's final movie and final test is big, not just metaphorically as in this arc, but physically too through the Sinister 6. As we cut back to prison that holds Norman Osborn, he has gathered Alex O'Hearn and Herman Schultz, and he says that he has someone on the outside who has helped him stay hidden all this time, and he specializes in hiding in plain sight, and will help them get out of prison. His name is Dimitri, but more commonly known as the Chameleon, aka the one who helped Norman fake his death in the first place. The Chameleon calls in and has infiltrated the prison by impersonating a guard, and allows Norman and the others to know the exit plan. So then the Chameleon, Norman, Herman and Alex all escape prison, and they go back to the ruined Oscorp Tower, which is now up for sale. We then get a scene where Norman reminisces about all the good times he had at Oscorp with Harry and Richard, just to show the human side of Norman Osborn. But then when he thinks about Richard, he gets mad and is reminded of his goal, the one he needs to destroy, the pest that bothered him and his family for decades, the Parkers, aka Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Norman says that there are two more members he has in mind for the team, and that they will be the two heaviest hitters, and they were just in very high containment. That is why the reason why Chameleon couldn't actually break them out. Norman reveals some upgraded Shocker and Rhino armor Oscorp had in development for these two before they were put in prison by Spider-Man before. He equips the Chameleon with some stun grenades and bombs. Chameleon Chameleon will be the technician and planner, Shocker and Rhino will be the heavy hitters, and Norman will be working on tech and armor for himself and the others back at Oscorp. Shocker and Rhino head back to the prison to break out none other than Electro and Dr. Otto Octavius, aka Doc Ock. They go back to the prison and Chameleon comes up with the plan. They start blasting the prison to pieces. Meanwhile, Peter Parker is with MJ and MJ gets a call on a phone to come to do a breaking news report. Peter asks what's it about and she says that two supervillains known as the Rhino and the Shocker are blasting Rikers Island to pieces. She prompts Peter to go and that she will be fine. They both leave. MJ is on the scene as the news reporter and Spider-Man swings into action. Now here we will be taking pages from Spider-Man PS4 and also mixed with kind of the Web of Shadows prison break scene vibe too. Meanwhile, the Rhino breaks out Electro and Electro says it's finally good to be free and Rhino says to follow him. They start tearing everything up as Spider-Man lands on the scene and sees Rhino and Electro. Spider-Man will make a witty remark about Shocker and the fact that he was looking forward to beating him a second time. Spider-Man will fight the Rhino and Electro and will be distracted by them. Electro won't be able to get the upper hand as easy as he did before in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, as this scene will showcase how far Peter has come as Spider-Man and his abilities. Meanwhile, Shocker will be with Doc Ock and tried to blast the door down, but he can't. He communicates to Chameleon and he lets him in. Doc Ock has his arms tied to the wall and Shocker breaks him out. He introduces himself to Doc Ock and Ock asks what's going on. Shocker says that just to follow him and all will be explained. Doc Ock escapes too and himself and Shocker will join the Rhino and Electro. Spider-Man will be in pure disbelief. Four of his arch villains have been banded together and are about to take him out when Black Cat arrives on the scene and will help Peter. However, they will escape. Skip forward a bit and we'll have a scene with Peter, MJ and Aunt May and Felicia, who has been invited back to Aunt May's house to a little gathering. There is a little awkward moment where MJ will look over at Felicia and it'll be a little funny moment to add a little bit of tension to the scene as these two characters have never met before. Peter will introduce her as the Black Cat. Peter will be frantic, however. Four of his main villains are out on the streets and he doesn't know what to think. He is breaking down in front of the three people he loves the most, and those three people, all he wants to do is protect each and every one of them. He's afraid because they know who Peter is, they know where he is. The six know the identity of Spider-Man, and they are going after MJ, Felicia, and Aunt May, as well as himself. Peter knows this. Peter is panicking, and this is where we get the gist of Peter just wanting to protect the ones he loves comes in again. All he cares about doing is just protecting these three people, although some of his attention should be on the bigger picture. To his knowledge, four villains are out there, but countless people died at Rikers, and maybe even more will if Peter doesn't do anything about it. Felicia pulls him aside and has this conversation with him. As a superhero herself now, Felicia needs to remind Peter. Felicia says that they need to take this more calmly because more people will die if they are not careful. They need to defend New York, not just MJ and Aunt May. Felicia, who in this universe barely grew up with a family and now only really having Peter in her life, the only other thing or group of people she is connected to are the people of New York City, the people she is now protecting. Felicia tries to tell Peter this, that Spider-Man isn't meant to single others out. He's the everyman, and Peter, in his arrogance, because he's afraid, says she's wrong. Felicia says that he needs to get over himself. Peter argues back, saying, try having someone you love ripped away from you by fault of your other half and then try loving again. And Felicia has no response. Peter walks off. He uses this as motivation to hunt for the villain, not for the city, but out of being scared. We then get a scene with Norman as the villains arrive back to Oscorp, and then Doc Ock meets Norman for the first time in years. They have a slight argument. Ock saying that he stole everything from him and casted him out. Doc says that he could squash him right now and grabs him with his arms. Norman argues back, well, who stopped you from having a second chance? And then the Doc replies with Spider-Man, and Norman says that's why he's going to be the bigger person and set aside their differences to finally kill Spider-Man and have their revenge and free will. Doc puts him down and agrees to it, but he says once Spider-Man is dead, the feud with them isn't over. Then the Chameleon arrives back and they equip themselves with gear they need. Norman puts on the Goblin mask and the Sinister Six is here. Norman Osborne as the Green Goblin, Herman Schultz as the Shocker, Alex O'Hearn as the Rhino, Dimitri as the Chameleon, Max Dillon as Electro, and Dr. Otto Octavius as Doc Ock. Spider-Man goes to check the only place where all the trouble has been happening over the last couple of years, and what do you know, he was right. He lands on Oscorp, and then out of nowhere, Electro zaps him. Spider-Man manages to cling to the side of the building, then Doc Ock bursts out of the window and knocks him down to the floor on the street. The crowd starts clearing out as Chameleon throws a smoke bomb, confusing Spider-Man. Then Rhino hits him, and Shocker blasts him. Spider-Man is on the floor, and then a laugh can be heard, and the Green Goblin flies above Spider-Man as the smoke clears. The Goblin is back, and Spider-Man's eyes widen as he looks around him to see himself surrounded by nearly every big supervillain he's ever went up against. They have a fight, and the Six come out on top, obviously. Spider-Man is beaten to a pulp. He escapes, and then Felicia finds him and brings him to the house where MJ screams in horror as Peter is bleeding to death on the sofa. Aunt May tries to patch him up as best as possible. Peter is down. Then the Six are causing havoc around the city. They threaten to destroy everything, the city, everyone he loves if he does not show himself for a final showdown. The city is starting to become a war zone, each member of the Six tearing things up left and right, and it's all because Peter pays more attention to the ones he loves rather than the city. Peter looks out the window to the city. Then it clicks. Felicia stands behind him and says, "Do you realize now?" And Peter says, "I do." Peter says, "To save you guys, I have to save everyone else." He says he can't let the city down, especially after everything they've been through with Spider-Man. Felicia stays with MJ and Aunt May just in case the Six come back, or at least a small portion of them do. And Peter, bloody, torn and hurt, walks out onto the street and shouts that he is here. The Sinister Six, all of them arrive on the scene, and it's the standoff of the century. Spider-Man, Peter Parker, versus the Sinister Six. Everything has been leading to this. Chameleon throws a smoke bomb. Peter closes his eyes and trusts his spider sense and moves out of the way as Rhino comes charging in. Rhino hits a wall and gets stuck. Shocker tries to blast him, but he jumps out of the way and the blast hits the Rhino even further into the wall and damages his suit. Electro tries to blast him, but Peter is dodging all the blasts left, right and center until Doc Ock grabs him and throws him at a wall. Peter lands, and that was one mishap. He can't have many of them more. Peter webs Shocker's gloves up, hoping they'd overheat, but they don't, and Shocker melts the webs off, saying that he's learned from last time they met. Electro and Shocker carry on blasting him, but Peter has an idea how to defeat them. Spider-Man positions himself where they're either side of him, and they blast each other and overcharge each other and blow each other up. Spider-Man webs Shocker and Electro down to the floor. 3 down, 3 to go. Doc Ock goes after Spider-Man again. They fight each other for a while, whilst Chameleon and Norman sit back and watch and devise another plan. Spider-Man defeats Ock and then swings over to Norman. The Green Goblin stands in front of him, his last stand. And then he hears MJ's voice behind him. He turns around, and there stands MJ. MJ says that she can't put up with Peter anymore. Being Spider-Man has put too much stress on her. Peter is so confused. She then gets close to the edge of the building. Her feet start quivering. Then the Goblin gets on his glider and says that it's not over yet and he's about to fly off, when MJ leaps off the building. Peter switching attention between the two. He trusts his senses. He thinks. And he leaps after the Goblin and grabs his neck with his arms. The Goblin is surprised. MJ activates a parachute and transforms into the Chameleon. Their plan had been foiled and Peter's arc is complete. He has learned he couldn't let the Goblin get away, because if he did, and he was selfish and saved the fake version of MJ, the likelihood is the Goblin would have gone after the real MJ. So he's learned to save the ones he loves. He has the responsibility as Spider-Man to save the city first and everyone else, and act as the everyman. Spider-Man and the Goblin have their final battle. It's rough and it's tough, but Spider-Man comes out on top and the city cheer for Peter Parker as he collapses to the ground. The real Mary Jane arrives on the scene with Felicia. They run over to Peter, who is on the floor barely breathing, but he's still alive. Cut to a couple of months later, and Peter is happy with MJ, although he still looks like he's recovering. We get an ending narration from Peter Parker as it's finally over. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man story comes to a close. He defeated the Sinister Six, he defeated the Goblin, and the city is going back to normal. We then get a post-credits scene. Peter is with MJ, and then it comes on the news that a strange man, grey, tall, and large, has entered through a portal of some kind, and he's looking for Spider-Man. He says his name is Morlin. And that is it. Thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you are new, and hit the bell next to the subscribe button to not miss any more of the videos as soon as they go out. And with that being said, Spider-Verse is next. Spider-Verse Part 1 is the first part of 3 that will wrap up the Spider-Verse saga. Let's get hashtag Spider-Verse hype in the chat. I can't wait to get that to you guys, but it's been a pleasure continuing these stories, and I've had a lot of fun, but we're almost at the end. And with that being said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.